Good evening, Facebook family and friends, YouTube family and friends. It is me, Sheba. I'm your happy bug, the motivational speaking poet. And tonight I'm here with another poet. Her name is Wenzy.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about the issue. So, the issue that we're going to come to you with today is the issue that has been kind of like pounding upon our nation for too many, probably more centuries than we'd like to really admit, or maybe a little bit more than a lot of us really know. And I'm always excited when we come here to the panel, or we're having these conversations because it always kind of makes me feel that we have an opportunity to give someone something that they never thought about or enlighten someone on something that maybe they never knew. So hopefully you grab something from this because the topic that we're going to be talking about in our poetic tongue this evening is about the issue with the police brutality, and I guess a lot of racial issues too that maybe if we just thought about it a little different, we would deal with them a little bit different. So we're gonna be doing poetry in the midst of it all today. And another thing too, I guess it was a few days ago, I got up and got dressed for the day. And I have t-shirts, like I do t-shirts. I've been doing them for the past maybe 6 years or so, but I broke out with them about 6 years ago for the first time. And the t-shirt that I was wearing was one of my first drops, and it was called Hold Your Fire. And when I was walking outside, I looked down there and I was like, this T-shirt is like 5 years old, soon to be six, and we're still having these same issues with the things that the police have been doing to our so-called black men here in America and or wherever, but particularly we're talking about America. And it's happening, and it's like, wow, when does it ever stop? And I think a bigger part of the issue is that we just let things happen and we just kind of let them go. And instead of staying true to the matter at hand and true to the issue, we just kind of let them fly in and fly out. And then we're upset about something for one moment because something happening. And then we let it go. And then it comes back to us again. Meanwhile, it's never being solved. So that's what we're here for tonight. And I wrote a piece called Artificial, and I'm not sure if you guys have been following that on my page, but I dropped it in 8 segments for like 8 different days. And it was how I say this, it was inspired by another poet, which is what made this interesting to sit with another poet on topics that we have poetry about or we've written pieces over, and kind of share the ideologies, even though they're different. So welcome to the Poets Parley. We'll be here every Wednesday night with a different poet, and maybe again we'll have the same poet. I don't really know. We'll just kind of have to follow it at that time. But I called Wednesday and I said, "Hey, I want you to sit on my panel," and she said, "Okay." So that's why we started this night with Wednesday. So this is our first night. So welcome again, Wednesday. Thank you very much for doing this with us because I think we need each other more than we may realize or whatever. So the piece that I have, like I said, is called Artificial, and I'm not going to go over it in one big full circle. I'm just going to read like the first 3 segments of Artificial, and then we're going to give Wednesday the floor, and then she'll share with us some things that she has. And she's listen, Wednesday is off the hook. I met Wednesday, I guess what it was about a year or so ago. Wednesday we met one another, and I did an open mic at my house, and she just blew me away because I couldn't believe that this. I guess at the time she was 16, going on 17 or 17 years old. Like, oh my God, really? Where did you get this from? Like, how did you have this experience? Because I didn't have experiences like this when I was young. So trust me, what she's sharing with us this evening is just nothing shy of a treat. She's going to give it to you and lay it out. And if you have a soft, sensitive, emotional being, if you're one of those emotional people and you let things get to you really easily, don't you might want to disconnect yourself if if you're watching this, because all hats are off, all bets are off on the Poets Parlay, because it's where we're here to be free. Can you say something to me, Wednesday? Because I don't hear you. Are you mute? Check your mic. I can't hear you. It went away. Hang it up and come back. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties. I think it's when her mic started, when her connection started spinning out. I think it took away her microphone. So hopefully when she come back, we'll be able to hear her, because she is where it is really at. It's always amazing when the young people can share their ideas with us, because a lot of the feelings that we've had for whatever, however long, and they've affected us in whatever way. But to know that they're affecting our youth in much of the same way, and maybe even worse, it's a really big matter. So I'm really delighted to have Wendy on tonight, because her views of things are very amazing, and it's always like a treat when she and I even get on the phone. We talk to each other, and we can go on for hours, and we can go back and forth over different topics or whatever. But I'm going to move right ahead. Well, I actually want to wait for Wednesday, because I want her to share. Um, I want her to be here when I do share what it is that I'm going to read with you this evening. But um, it's really important to me that as a race of people, we continue to grow. It's really important to me that as a people, that we're constantly reminding ourselves of our strengths. And I think the thing that kind of gets to me the most of all, with all the issues that we do have arise, is that we tend to not be persistent enough in our fight to justice, and we're not persistent enough in what we have that serves as issues to us, and the things that makes us not feel so great. We should stand a little bit more firm, and continue to not allow people to change that about us. Like, I have this ideology. I'm very respectful of others. I don't mind changing my intention to be perceived properly, but I also assert what I feel is necessary for people to understand about me. Just like even in that simple term of overstand. It was brought to my attention one day, like, why are we understanding? Like, you understand? It doesn't make sense. And it was never really clearly explained to me. So I kind of went to my dictionary to really research what the word under meant. Because as we know, words are conjunctive. A lot of words we use together. They're very small words and simple words, and we use them together. And then we make bigger words out of them, or new meaning out of the words that we once used. So when I went to study research under, everything about the term meant to not be on top or to be in with. It's always under, or around. It's never precisely there. So I researched the term underestimate, and then I researched the term of underevaluate, and it didn't make any sense that when we say we get something that we understand. So I use the term overstand, and I know what people are meaning when they say understand, but I stand the ground of overstanding for myself. And that is what I think as a culture we don't do. What we allow to happen is we allow the fads to become a part of the issue. Looks like we have Winsy back. Hey, Wins.
Yes, I'm back.
See, there
Another
you
device
go.
had. That was not working, so hopefully, and a new sweater. So hopefully,
Yes, I love it.
me big, but hopefully, the iPad will make the thing get done. So we're gonna try.
Yes.
Appreciate it. I thought, while I'm taking long, I'll give you like a sweater change.
Yeah. Just kind
You
of
got
give us something new all the way around.
right, just give you something new. I'm back. Everything's elite now. We're good.
Yes, we can hear you really good too. So thank you so much. I think what happened is your your connection went offline for 2 seconds, and when you came back, I couldn't hear the sound.
Yeah,
So I'm
AT&T.
glad we caught it then. But what I was just kind of going over with while you were gone, because I didn't want to start the piece that I have here called artificial without you being here. But what I was sharing with the audience is that I think a lot of the issues that we have as a culture of melanated people is that we don't stay persistent in issues.
Very
When
true.
things are hurting us or when things become a problem, we're not staying persistent. And we're not standing enough ground in all that we feel is necessary, if that makes sense. And I kind of was going over how I use the term overstand as opposed to understand, because when we underestimate things and we underevaluate. And even today I was riding with my daughters, and she said that the car was coming toward us, and it had red and blue lights at the bottom. You know how the people
Yeah.
with the souped up cars, and she was like, "Is that a undercover cop?" And I said, if he was undercover, he wouldn't have blue and red lights on his truck, on his car. And she was like, "Oh, that makes sense." So then that kind of reminded me why I use overstand, because if it was under something, it would be a cover up. So when I get it, I can't understand it. I have to overstand it. So that was just using that like simple concepts as to the things that when we learn that they're improperly being used, or things are improperly happening to us, we have to stay relevant. We have to keep it relevant to the issue until people understand that we mean business about what it is that we're gonna make that change. So I think, and I don't always think that it's bad that people decide to do what they want to do. I think it's bad when we allow them to
Mm-hmm.
do to us what they want to do when we decided that we didn't like to be done that way. So now that we have Wednesday back, I'll just kind of go in a little bit to artificial, and then we'll kind of give Wednesday the floor and let her give us some of her ideologies and her mindset, because it is on fire always. So artificial says, I was talking to a brother one day who fed my thoughts and opened up my thinking, said that he wrote a piece called Operation that talks about the reconstruction of the human and has programmed his thinking. Here's what he said. Like the game of Operation, you take the man's body parts out, put them back when the game is over, but kind of reprogram. So it kind of fucked with my head. Made me realize how many people walking around artificial. All their thoughts are improperly informed, leaving them unofficial. Simple concepts aren't making any sense. Living in itself seems to be an offense. Life to most people looks like a sentence. So instead of independence, we find ourselves falling prisoners to our own contradictions. Looking back at our foreparents dealing in superstition, so everything that around us that looks unresolved, it begins to look suspicious. And when I wrote that, as you could hear, it was a conversation I was having with another poet who had already written a piece. And then it just kind of made me realize, well, operation, I never really kind of thought about, or, kind of dissect the game. Who dissects the game of operations but a poet? So it was kind of fun, and it just kind of made me elaborate a little bit on the issue that we have at hand. So with that being said, we're going to turn the floor over to Wendy and let her blow us up this evening. So welcome again, Wendy.
Hi. So it's interesting to piggyback on what you said earlier about like the lack of consistency within the Black community when it comes to pressing issues. Where I do my internship at, they hosted, orchestrated rather, that's a more appropriate word, a peaceful protest. And
Hmm.
so like, okay, the day before we're gonna put you on program, and I just, when I push my pen, it's not really anything I used to really have to have in mind. It's just like I'm gonna push my pen and type, and whatever comes out first draft, that's what it is, and I'm not going back.
Right.
Whatever. Only thing I think about is what you said earlier, because with this protest, this was like the beginning parts of the protest, and it was like, what's going to change with this protest? And it was just so early on that I didn't see longevity for it, even though all the
Mm,
details for like with the George Floyd situation is so different because it happened in broad daylight. It was filmed, and there was not a hoodie, a bag of Skittles, a toy
mm,
gun to justify this murder. But no murder is justifiable. So what would change this one? So a poem came out of it called "So It Continues," and I'm going to read that to you. And yes. So it continues, the same events at a different venue. Black people are constantly on the menu. 400 years, we get no seat at the table in which we probably built. People have the audacity to say all lives matter when there's black bodies getting kicked around like filth. When it's black bodies that were enslaved, chained, sprayed, hanged, and killed, and the people who didn't have no remorse or guilt. And so it continues, the same events at a different venue when the heroes are on the scene and nobody came to the rescue. And it's a shame it took a video to test you, to stress you. Yes, you, I beg to you, I stress to you, I suggest to you, and I request to you that you support black people when nobody tells you to. Because when this is through, I'll still be black. Where people think less of you, neglect you, where they arrest you for no reason, where you get shot for no reason, a knee in your neck for no reason, you get killed for no reason. They don't protect you, they ignore you, they reject you, they oppress you, and they have a habit to forget you until it's the same events at a different venue.
Mm.
So that
Go on. I just love to hear you say it.
that happened, and I remember I called this Sheba, and she's like, add more to it. So I'm like thinking, and I'm thinking like, and when I write, because I remember the first time I wrote a poem performed at a talent show, I was called to the office for hate speech. But any poem that I have, it's already history that has been written, and I'm just regurgitating it to you in rhythm and rhyme.
Wow.
So I was trying to push my pen, but it's like the history is still going on. So like to write about a solution, I couldn't really write about because I have not seen a solution to this consistent behavior. Like I could not make my pen does not allow me to like I'm not like a Harry Potter writer. I can't use my imagination to cast a spell with my words to make something that I just haven't seen. So what I did is I tried to channel that into another poem that me and Mashiba talked about with the white lady who tried to educate me on being black because she was well versed in African American studies. So
Because of what though? What else did she tell you?
well, when I say African American studies, a lot of times white people, especially right now, what's going on, you see them checking in with their black friends, and you see a lot of streets saying Black Lives Matter, and a lot of sitcoms trying to embed black characters, but that's not what we asked for. Nor does that is it even trade off for the systematic and systemic racism that we still have to go through.
Right.
So um, I was I was at at the nonprofit I'm a part of, and she was going on to say how she didn't appreciate the rioting and that she doesn't feel like these monuments, racist monuments, throughout history, such as Confederate flags and statues, should be removed. And she feels like she is credible enough to say this because she has dated several woke black men and she has biracial children. So that puts her in a position to say that.
Mm.
And I had to let her know that it doesn't, because it doesn't matter how many books you read or black men you sleep with or biracial children that you bear. The greatest experience in life, I mean, the greatest teacher in life is experience. So that just really frustrated me. So all that I could not put into the solution for that poem, I did put into sort of a solution or answer, I would say, because maybe my solution is not the solution, but answer
Right.
into a poem about her. So
Okay. That's what's up. And it's really funny that you said it because I didn't even think about that through the process of the conversation we were having. And that's funny. Cause see, I didn't even know that you didn't, and when you were reading this poem to me, oh my God, it had me in here dancing. And it made me just want you to just give us some more. Because I think not that we always have an answer, because you don't always have an answer. Even when things have already been solidified and they've already happened, and you see that that was the outcome, and even when it made sense, there's always something else that could have happened. Like they say, you got those two roads you could take, and one would lead you maybe here, and maybe leads you to a longer life or a more prosperous life, and then the other one is be a short and hard life. It could, like the path could always be either or, and in my mind, I hear people when they say that, and it makes perfect sense when people say that. But to me, there's always another direction. Like it's never just what you see. My Abba had a saying, and I loved him. I loved his sayings. And one of his sayings were, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you can see. And a big part of that, to what that says to me, is people will tell you anything, and then they will show you what they think you want to see, so that it can reflect what they said that they thought you wanted to hear, if that makes sense. So it was, so when I see situations happening, I'm always okay. And it doesn't always have to be that it happened and that the solution that you thought was going to work will work. But then when you don't continue to try solutions, then you'll always have a problem, because you're not always trying a solution. And when I say that, I think about how I have a shirt right now that's on my new flyer that says, you're not you're not a slave, or you're free. So why must we keep journeying back to a time when we weren't? And I think that we constantly perpetuate the oppression of what the Caucasian tells us was real. And not that it wasn't real, or not that it's not happening, but I think a bigger part of it is that we don't really know what they're there to really do. And I think a lot of them don't know what their job really is. 10 times, if we stood before any of them, 7.5 out of 10 will tell you what they don't know about what they do. Promise you. Scouts aren't on that one. I had a situation, and it's off the topic, but I had a situation occur with my dog. I was at a really rough time in my life, and I had to go, and me and my children had to go and live with a lady, Miss Lyon. She was really good to us too. And when we went to her house, we could go, but the dog couldn't come in. So I had to put her in a cage outside. But she didn't like being in the cage, and the people walking by would taunt her. So we ended up putting her in the truck, let the windows down so she can have air. And we would give, put out her food and her water, and we would leave that in there. We knew that she wouldn't turn it over, but we checked on her, but she just couldn't live in the house with us. But she wasn't used to being out the door either. So anyway, one day I drove off in my other car to leave midnight in the truck we had her in, and the damn ambulance called me. The ambulance? What are you calling me for? This is the city of Lauderhill. We're calling you about the damn dog. I said, well, since the damn paramedics call a human about a dog, that's not your job. Why are they calling you about the dog? But they wanted us to see if she was okay. I said they should have called a veterinarian, but okay. So what you calling me for? She said, well, somebody called us, but it's nothing that we can really do because she has food, she has water, she's not dehydrated, and she didn't kick over her food, right? Fast forward a couple weeks. I told you that to tell you this. A few weeks later, we sleep and the knock comes on the door 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's a Caucasian guy, a nasty bastard, comes. Oh, the dog's in the car. I said, okay. He said she can't be in the car. I said, why? He said, because it's against the ordinance. I said, so what you want me to do? She can't come in the house? He said, well, if you had to go somewhere where you couldn't take her, then maybe you should have lived there. I said, I think that's maybe some Caucasian shit, but whatever, we're going to let you have that one. Keep putting your pocket and take it home. So he said, well, I said, well, I'm just going to wait till you leave so I can put the dog back in the car. And he said, if I come back here, you going to jail. I said, well, we'll cross that bridge when you come back. So that's how I felt. The man went to his car. The fella was gone for 20 minutes. I'm like, dang, when he gonna take his ass so I can put the dog back in the car and go back to bed? The man got out of his car. So he wasn't as fucked up as I originally thought he was. Came to me sitting in that seat with Midnight by me. And he said, you know what? You were right. There's no law against having that dog in the car. I said, I knew it, but you was too arrogant. And what I've learned is to not argue with a fool. Not that I'm calling you a fool, but I would have been a fool to argue with you when you didn't know the law yourself. But now that you know it, thank you for coming. Because to me, that took a man to fess up to say, you know what? She's right. They don't always know the law that they're upholding, supposedly. That was my point. there are so many laws out there, and the police don't always have an answer to those questions that people always seem to think that they do. So we must always continue and constantly continue to give them more work to do so that we can find out that they know what their job really is. And what's happening is that the people that don't really know, because I went to school for criminal justice, and they have a little book that is thicker than this book. Okay, it's about this size, but it's thicker. It's like this thick. It's the yellow book. And you know what they call the book? It's the book called Stupid Laws. Simple, stupid laws. If a person has, if a person who goes to school for criminal justice, like literally took the 4 years, you would never learn all of those laws. The police goes to the academy for 2 years at best. How can he uphold a law that he doesn't even understand? You never even read the law books to learn it. You only learned how to police. But we're not thinking about those things. You know what I mean? I studied the term police. Fucked me up. Because the public servant and the civil servant, which is what the officers are supposed to be, their job is to protect and serve us, the people. But once they call them police, they're doing in their job. Their job description is to keep order. So they're doing exactly what they think they're supposed to be doing. The only problem is there's no disruption where they're causing the disruption. They're creating the disruption and their fear, which is what we're subjected to as a people. So the solution would never really be solid. We just will always have to continue to do what's necessary. So, like when I see people protesting, it doesn't make sense to me. I think that they're doing it for their thought process. And I think that they mean well that they're doing it. But I don't think that they thought through what they're doing. Because if you thought through what you're doing, then you would try to figure out what the solution, what are you trying to get to? For the police to be fair when they were already sent to be unfair, they already fucked up. You give a man who's not used to having power, he's gonna abuse it. You know what I mean? So when I say solution, that's like my ideology of what a solution is. So if I have a man who doesn't know his position, then we need to teach him. That's the solution. How do we get the police officers or the civil servant? Because we need to probably stop them from being called police. Because in the people who should be called police are the military people, the people who were trained to do police work. The people that's riding in these cars are civil servants. Because the police can't protect and serve because that's not his job. I want you to look that word up later and study that term police. And you'll find out what they're doing is exactly what the word police means. And that term that's on the bottom of their card said to protect and serve is bullshit because they're not upholding the Constitution, which is what they should be doing for us. And I think that's where the conflict is coming in at. That's why we're getting so much pain and so much anguish in our neighborhoods because they already see us as a problem. We just have to begin to see them as the problem, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna give you back the floor, and I hope I didn't take too much time, but that just kind of gave me that ideology. You just kind of put me in that headspace when you said that. It was really good. So thank you.
Yes, I think, but with polices and with anything that we do, and I was having this conversation with one of my peers as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we try to do this thing where we, as Black people, want to get a seat at the table instead of creating our own table. So when you look at like these systems and systemic things and definitions, mind you that all this stuff was thought of when we were property. So it really doesn't apply to us. Like the system is not broken because it's working for people it was designed to work for.
Mm.
So we weren't included in these promises. So it's like, I mean, it's time to build our own table. You know, we and it's been on multiple occasions where we have tried to do that, and these same systems usually get them destroyed and protect the people who destroy them. For example, we had the Black Panthers that were our police, and then we had the original Crips and Bloods that were their slogan one time was policing the police. So
Mm.
when you talk about policemen and jobs and systems, they protect and serve, but we were never when they see they wrote this down, we were property, not people. It was never designed for us to be like that, and it's just really unfortunate. But I think the thing that the protests do, because if you want to educate people, especially people who have been in a bubble so long, you have to make them uncomfortable and break
Mm.
them. So when you see tons of people walking down the street, it's going to grab
Mm-hmm.
your, and you're going to do two things. You're going to either fight or flight. So you're going to join this protest and be proactive and learn about it, or you're going to be like some very arrogant. Not even I don't even use the word arrogant because even some of the most sedity people are protesting and speaking out about this. But you're going to be ignorant or join the fight. So I think that's what the protesting does. Because even like when you think about what is it, why we can integration, which is like a totally different subject, but
Mm.
MLK, that whole protest lasted for 300 and some days, and that was consistent. And at the end of that, we can come in your restaurants and sit at your buses, but that was almost like another deflection. And I say that because
Mm-hmm.
when people were asking for equality, that did not mean integration. And it's sad to say, but it
Mm.
happened. A lot of the things that we have
Mm-hmm.
got the short end of the stick. Um, when they said they wanted, better schooling, they didn't mean necessarily mean I want to go to school with white people, and I'm
That
all for
is solid.
community, but they just wanted to not have hand me down books. They didn't want to have hand me down desks. They didn't want to, have a hand me down classroom. They wanted the same as their white counterparts.
Right.
So, and throughout this marathon that we're running, I hope that Black people do understand that the justice does not lie. The street paintings and the music videos and the endorsement deals and all these things that should have already been done, it lies in actual measurable, attainable change. Like if we're not getting that, then there is no change. So I hope they don't get distracted because America has been giving us pacifiers for centuries, so we can just
Right.
and until the next thing happens at a different venue. So I hope that
Right.
keep that in mind, definitely. But we also have to come together as a community and we need to set an agenda. And one thing that integration brought about is it also tore Black people apart more because you'll have like the Black person that's your Candace Owens type. You'll have like your Louis Farrakhan. You have your Barack Obamas, or you're not Black enough because you live on this side of town, or you're not Black enough because you do this, or you're too Black and you sag your pants, and we can't get on one accord. I think first as a community we need to get on one accord. It doesn't
Right.
matter sexuality, creed. If you're Farrakhan or King, someone needs to lead and we just need to move as a unit because I think that's what we struggle with the most. But definitely we need to go back to creating our own tables.
Right. And I totally agree with that. And it's so funny that you said that because I was watching a documentary with President Obama a few days about President Obama a few days ago. And he said that where he come from, things were a little bit different because I think he was raised in Hawaii, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not mistaken, he was raised in Hawaii. And although he was like the odd one out, they didn't really treat him bad. So although he was different, if he felt a way, it was by his own, his own admittance, like in his mind, right? But he wasn't affected by it. So when he come out of college, he came here or he came to the States and he went to the poor Black neighborhoods because he always identified more with his Black side. And and when he got here, he realized how poor people were. So he created a job and called himself the community something, some like a
Mm-hmm.
community cleanup guy. And it was no such job. But what he really so a couple years he went like giving us passing out his resume to like I guess the city halls and the different places that created these types of jobs. And one day he got a call from Chicago to go there and work. And when he went there and he was in those quarters with those people, he realized that the doors that were open for him weren't necessarily open for everyone else. So we do have to create that for ourselves. And the big part for me, and it bothers me a lot with people of melanin, is that we're always expecting for people to give us something. And my big thing and my ideology is that you will never have someone give you something that they already took. People that take shit don't give it away. Not like that. Especially if you're requesting that they do. If a person stole something, they want to keep it because they stole it for themselves. So, not that we should be stealing, but that we should be creating more opportunities and fighting for its safety, if that makes sense. Because what they did, I think it was Rosewood. I'm not 100% sure. I think it was in Rosewood. Those people built their community and then they burnt it down because they fucked up. If we're going to be fighting for anything, we should be fighting that we continue to be safe, not ask anyone to do anything for us. Because if I have to really ask you for equality when you knew that it didn't make sense for it to be unjust anyway, that doesn't make sense to me. Because you thought it was wrong when you did it. Because in order for you to mark a man as property and not a person, and now you respect dogs more than you do people, you're fucked up. So now I must ask you for equality? No. We have to demand it. Demand it and stay on the demand for it. Just as we did in our culture of talk. Cultured people are by far we're amazing people. And it ain't because I'm of culture that I feel that way. Everything we do good, we just do well. We don't need anybody to teach us that. We have more entrepreneurs in the hood than America has as a whole. Fuck what they talking about. All those drug dealers standing on those corners, those are entrepreneurs. All the people that work for themselves are entrepreneurs. Even if they settle at making $200 for the week, it doesn't matter. The swap shop is full of entrepreneurs. Some of those shops are ran by other people, but a lot of them are ran by us. They go out there, they pay their little money, and then they have their little spot. Entrepreneurs. But what they did was, in their inequality, is they created a law to take down the people who were making the most money. Because the drug dealers make more money than the man on top of corporations. That doesn't make him any less an entrepreneur. He's just giving people something that might destroy them, but he's working for himself. He's working for himself and his family. When he go out there and bust his hustle and he sell his nickel and his dime bags, he's working for himself. He might not have it he's not having incorporated it, but it doesn't make it any less a business. So instead of us fighting for justice of other things, we should be fighting to remain safe in the things that we do. Not that we should be promoting drug dealers. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that there's a lot of wealth within us. There's a lot of wealth in our neighborhoods. And like you said, we're divided within ourselves. But it goes back to history a little bit. Because if people stop and read the Willie Lynch letter, it will fuck your whole mind up about life. When you read the Willie Lynch letter, for those of you who have never read that letter, the first thing you should pay attention to is December 25th that it was released on. December 25th, which is what we celebrate and make a lot of money for America for Christmas. That's the first thing. A whole lot of money on that day. They got the greatest end of the year or the first quarter cycle coming through when we celebrate Christmas, right? But that man sat on that riverbank, and the things that he said is what's happening right now. We separate ourselves based on our color. We're worried about colorism. All of so many of our island women walking around bleaching themselves. A lot of our American girls, nobody's happy with what they are, and then we're blaming the Caucasian for being fucked up. But he's been who he is. We have to change who we
Mhm.
are in order for us to make a demand on anyone for being who they are. The laws were made to fuck us up, is what they were. That's what those laws are. The Constitution was made to protect us. So instead of worrying about what they're considered to be laws or the acts that they bring about, we should go back to the drawing board, really study our Constitution and find out where we belong as people so that we're forcing people to give us what with what's right. Because that's where the equality comes in. But then we're fighting against each other. We're turning each other in. We're calling the paramedics on people who got a dog when they beat their dogs every day and don't even treat their dogs right. So we're beating each other up. And the other people are just jumping on the bandwagon because they was fucked up to begin with. So I think that we just have to really be better about that. And I'm gonna give you back the floor. What in that regards, I'm gonna give you back the floor, Wednesday.
Yes, I do think that's very important. And to go back to, the entrepreneurship, it's just really sad because it's also like I noticed with the black community that oftentimes we're like crabs in the bucket. Like if you look at dollar circulation, the black dollar only circulates within its community for 6 hours. Um,
Mm,
versus the white dollar circulates for 17 days and the Asian dollar circulates for 30 days. And if you look at the Asian community, that's the community that caters to black women. That's the people that we go to get our nails done and our bundles
mm,
from and our eyelashes plucked and our eyebrows shaped. And it's just really unfortunate because not only are you losing your dollars, and this is going to sound really backhanded, but you're losing yourself because you're trying to conform to America's Eurocentric standards of beauty.
mm,
And those like it's just really subtle instances where there are microaggressions and certain racism put in place, and if you don't know better, you can't do better. So it's not like you're sitting down every day and just researching this stuff. But I'm just trying to put you up on game here. When that person is selling that mixtape or that T-shirt or is giving a class on something within the Black community, it's important and it really makes a difference if you support them because a lot of the people have what they have not off of because they work for it, but America's ran on capitalism. So, and when you look at it from a capitalistic point of view, a lot of communities have golf courses and better schools because that's the dollars moving in their community. So
mm.
I think it's really important what you were saying about us on us. We have so many skills, but it's a matter of channeling them together to work together for each other.
Right.
And we know like history throughout history there's many instances where outside factors divided us, with the light skin is in the house and the dark skin is outside of the house. But now that we know this history, and now that we're in a day and age where you have a whole computer within the palm of your hand, use it to your
Mm-hmm.
advantage because the ancestors and our predecessors and our grandparents, they gave us the game. Like everything that we need they gave us, and I really appreciate them and what they did with their boycotting and their sit-ins and their walkouts. But it's like also within that, don't just try to copy and paste a picture from history. Really research what you're doing because it's
Mm,
there. The pieces of the puzzle are there. Anything that we need to know is within these books and it is within our history. So
mm-hmm.
I just hope that, after this movement, that not only does something give for the nation, but also this is a wake up hour for the Black community. And they start to think like Black Lives Matter don't only matter when it's a Black man on the ground with a knee in his neck, but it matters in Flint, Michigan, where the water is still dirty. It matters in Chicago, where the schools are terrible. It matters on tables, operation tables that Black women lay on for surgeries and to have their babies, because just as many Black women die in operating rooms as Black men die at the hands of the police. I hope that
Wow.
we respect our Black women more. I hope that after this movement, there is an eye opening and a aha moment for the Black community. Because if you do the same
Wow.
thing you've always done, you'll get the same results you've always gotten. And it's time to look at things with a different lens.
Right.
Time to start reaching out to those Black people who are unorthodox Black people. Because sometimes those same people that may not identify with your Blackness, they have what you need to get the whole community to where it needs to go. So I hope that they keep that in mind when the dust settles and everything.
And you said something to me one day when we were talking, and I thought it was very powerful, and I would like for you to elaborate on it a little bit more. You said to me, how did you put that to me? I was talking about educating ourselves, and you said something about we always want it to be like a easy fix in the culture community. Melanated people always want a easy fix, and education is not something that happens overnight, and it's a process of it. You remember that conversation?
Yes, so I think for especially Black people, we are so used to instant, instant, instant. Education is not instant. Um, we tend to have a hard time indulging in things that just like we just don't identify with, and that's also from a lot of systems put in place, unfortunately. Even when like you go to school and you take like your SAT or you take these standardized tests, you read about stuff and you read about stories about people, and usually it's pretty, white stories. A lot of the stories that and narrative that you read, and these are just like regular stories, even like when you're in elementary school, Black kids can identify with. So we tend to unplug ourselves. But I was telling Miss Sheba that we have to get out of that mindset of knowledge being instant. We got to stop watching, Jordan Peele movies for knowledge. Like that's not how you get them. Also, like in the poem that I was talking about with the lady that I had to confront about, her thinking that because she had African American men, that means that she understands the African American plight. I also wrote that in any book you read, in any movies, you're gonna always lack because you can't pack into movies and books what it feels like to be Black because there's not enough time. And if you did that, you would rip the spine of that book would not
Mhm.
bind if you could put everything in there about being Black. So you have to keep in mind that this this marathon is really a marathon, not a race. And
Right, right,
it takes time. You really have to cultivate yourself. Like, don't just stick your child in front of like some typical African cartoon and think that's like, oh, okay, that wipes out 400 years because it doesn't. Knowledge is
right,
in today's day and age, if you want a better body, you go get it done. If you want food, you call Uber Eats. If you're bored, you just get in your car and go to the nearest bowling alley. But that's not how knowledge works. And a lot of times within the Black community, while our while we're at like Little League practice, our white counterparts are like somewhere doing something tedious, like learning the piano. Not to discredit football, but they're not learning how to run a ball. They're learning a tedious skill that requires patience and a certain mindset and not anger. And they're just really learning how to navigate and have that zen and that patience. And
right.
that's really how they get to where they're going.
Because they never stop working. Let us hear that piece. Like, can we hear that piece that
Oh, yes,
you
I would.
keep talking to us about? You're referencing.
Yeah, so I told you it was about, the white lady who has dated woke Black men and has mixed children. So she understands the plight. Like, doesn't matter if she's blonde hair, blue eyes. So it says, I found myself in a conversation about what's occurring in the nation, and it agitated, aggravated, and exasperated me. A white lady let words glide off her tongue faster than butter melts in a frying pan, which sucked me in quicker than quicksand, as she said that she felt that she knows about the black plight because she dated a Black man and can bear Black children. Like I'm supposed to understand. She went to tell me about Black history books and theories and experiments. And I had to stop and let her know that the greatest teacher in life is experience. So, white people, it doesn't matter how many Black people you date, or how much Black D that you take, or the pigment of your children's face, nor the movies you watch, or the books you read, because it's a privilege in that you see. Privilege is what it is indeed. You get to read it. I have to live it. I am the characters. I am the factor. You are the audience. I am the actor. But the scene continues beyond the credits, beyond the screen, and it continues beyond the sequels. Matter of fact, backtrack. There is no sequel because living with this black skin can be lethal. And to this,
Mm,
there's no end. I wake up every morning and I do it again and again and again and again. And black men aren't a shortcut into black womanhood either. Stop with the jungle fever because as soon as you
mm,
detach his presence, you're not dating a black man. You are a white woman. Sad to say, you are the shade of the woman that Emmett Till was found mutilated for. When you step out your door, you are not the mother of black kids. You are a white woman, America's prized possession. Reading books is a start, but just because you read them doesn't mean you know what it's like to be black. Books are a start, but they lack. They can't pack all what it means to be black within the pages. If they could, it wouldn't be able to bind. The spine would be like the spines of so many black people. The book would be
mm.
like black people around the world falling apart. So keep all of this in mind when you speak on the black plight. Don't matter. It doesn't matter if you never had to fight the black fight. And
Solid.
I just really felt like 'cause she said it with her chest. Like she said what she said with her chest. Like very, very just
Arrogant.
arrogant like yeah, I totally know what it felt like. Excuse me, and you gonna say that to me with like no sense of humbleness,
Yeah.
and because you are dating a black man and have black kids, that means you've seen what it means to be black or even black womanhood, because black womanhood is very
Mm,
hard to do, and I just like she trivialized the whole struggle of black women because to be a black woman is a very beautiful struggle, but it is very hard at the same time.
mm.
And even with her biracial kids, yes, they are black, but at the same time, we still have those stigmas placed on them where they are superior over people who are darker pigmented. So when you start saying that, you're just reiterating those stigmas. So she
Right.
corrected.
I like that. I did a piece years ago. It was called Racial Differences. And one part of it says, we're around here calling mixed race people black. But if they really want to be called white, what would be wrong with that? Because they're really not black, or they're really not of melon. They're not melanated. They're of a mix of what we are. So it's just, to me, it's just like milk is milk, right? Even when you take some of the stuff out of it, it's at the end of the day, it's still milk. The child is a person, but they're not a black person. They're not. They just, people say that because that's what has been perpetuated to believe, or to for people to think over history's time. That's what they want you to say, to believe that, so that they can downgrade yet another individual. Because even when Abraham Lincoln, I think it was Abraham Lincoln that said 3/5 of a man, you keep his mind, body, and his soul. He perpetuated the same bullshit. You know what I mean? He says it's only a part of what it is. It doesn't make it a whole thing. It just, we so even in her argument, it really didn't make any sense, because your children are a part of you and their culture father, which I don't have anything against racist. I mean, and multiracial people. I don't. I rather take my hat off to them every time I see them,
Mm-hmm.
especially when a Caucasian woman is with a cultured man, because relationships come with their own struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got the struggle with being cultured and hued and unhued. I guess I use that term. But a lot of men of culture will tell you that he dates a Caucasian woman because I'm dealing with her, because you're not. So instead of them being so greatly, like always so boastful about having been chosen, you have only been chosen because he couldn't handle what would have made him more happy, what would have made him more right anyway. Not necessarily that it would have made him more happy, but it would have made him more right. He chose you for that purpose. You weren't the first choice. You were the alternate. And a lot of them do that as if it's a privilege to have something that I guess we could have had, or something that we could have won. It's I think that we go through more as a cultured woman than cultured men. Believe it or not,
Definitely, we do.
they own like they have their problems in the world, like in the streets. But we have the problems in the street. We have the problems in the home. We're left with the children. A lot of them mentally haven't been. A lot of them mentally haven't been properly formed to have to deal with us. So now we got to deal with us. We got to deal with the family structure. We got, we have to deal with the world. We have to deal with the same prejudices, maybe even more, because a lot of people don't value women like they should.
Mm-mm.
So it just kind of makes a lot of what you said about the situation like really true, because people aren't really thinking about some of the stuff that they really say, and that didn't make any sense at all. So that was really solid. What else were you thinking about? What else were you thinking about coming
I,
into tonight?
well, just overall, because I did do a podcast last night with two white people, and they have a like a pop culture podcast, and I remember just talking to them, and because just so you know, if you're black, don't feel like you're obligated to educate anyone on your plight or your history or any of these things, because you are not, because it's always been there. You've been black before George Floyd was murdered. So you don't need to feel as if, okay, let me go educate them, because I mean, we we pulled their cotton and breastfed their child. We spent 400 years around them, and they could have learned about us. And even now, throughout school, in kindergarten, I made a dreidel and sung the dreidel song, and I did Cinco de Mayo and talked about Thanksgiving, and there was really no Black history that was talked about. So I've had to put my culture on the back burner and learn everybody else's, and
Mm.
and keep quiet, because when you get home, you're told, when you get around these white people, don't act a fool, don't act a donkey, don't act a color. So you can't tell me that if I had to do it my whole life, you can't go a couple months and go learn something. So back to the podcast. So at first I was like, it's not my job to educate them, but it is good to have honest conversations and not sometimes educate, but have honest conversations about elephants in the room, which is what we did. And one elephant for me is on a pop culture podcast. Anything that is something, no matter what it is, Black people, especially entertainment, music, made the blueprint for. So if you're talking about pop culture and you're not speaking about Black culture, it kind of makes me give you like side eye. Like, how do you talk about this? Because it's been Beyonce has released a Lemonade album. You have Kendrick Lamar. You even have Lil Baby, who is more of like a trap type of rapper. Even he is veering over to the Black Lives Matter movement. So you could have learned something, but you overlooked it because it didn't apply to you at that time.
Right.
Also, with this movement, they asked what I think was different. I do think that this movement is not powered off of, solidarity, but I think it's powered off of a lot of guilt, especially white guilt. Because, like I said, George Floyd was killed in broad daylight, and we saw a man intentionally murder him. It was dark outside. He had a hoodie on. I couldn't identify the suspect. The tents were too dark. I thought the city.
Mm-hmm.
And people are feeling like, oh my goodness, what they have been telling us has been true. This boy is calling out for his deceased mother on film. How many stuff happened not on film? So I do think that with this movement, people are feeling guilty. And like they do with everything,
Mm.
yeah, if we protest for XYZ amount of days, this is going to wipe out, but it's not. So I think that's what's making this protest have longevity.
Okay.
And then to go back to the black women, and it's not even like to something that's competition, or I say this with a sense of pride, but black women do put up with a lot more than black men, because not
Mm-hmm.
only do are we the heroes for black men,
Mm-hmm.
but we also are usually demonized by black men as well, and we
Yeah.
have to pick our heads up, and we have to remind ourselves who we are. And even now, looking at the George Floyd situation, his fiance, who is white, has yet to really chime in with anything,
Mm.
but his you see his baby his child's mother, who is black, is on the forefront and at the front lines, like all black women do. Also, when black women get out into the world, we go to the stores, and it's better now. We can't even find products on the shelf for us. Growing up, there was no black dolls. You're constantly getting reminded that you're at the bottom of the totem pole, and nobody cares about you. With black men, you are idolized for being athletes and rappers, and we
Hmm.
can't do anything outside of being a black woman, or we're demonized for it. And
Right.
there,
Or, hmm even in the modeling industry, a lot of us don't fit in.
right,
And
because
that's the industry where women are glamorized, but we're not as so much of us aren't because we're too thickly built for the most part. You know what I mean? And you don't kind of fit into that either. So I think that's why I always think that it's very important. That's why I think it's important for us to create those situations for ourselves and to become more economically strong for ourselves. I think that's really vital because it's just like they say, if you don't think that you're beautiful, no one else is going to think you're beautiful. If you don't think a whole lot of your worth, then and I think a lot of it we have to stop saying that we are not what we want to be. I think that's a bigger part of it. I think that we have to give me 2 seconds. Sorry, being mommy. But yeah, so and I think that we have to create more of those possibilities. And to me, those are solutions. Those are the solutions that we have to create. How do we, because like a lot of us work for these companies there's so many of us behind the scenes, not enough of us in the forefront where we could be seen when the decisions are being made. But we're always the one that the decisions are being made about or to control. We have to do more of it. The only way to become the solution, only way to create a solution is to recognize that there's a solution that needs to be made. And economically, we're not strong. We're not strong enough economically. And that's the problem. The Jewish people deal with Jewish people for the most part. They got their stores. And when you go into one of those communities, it's packed with Jewish people. It's very few, if anyone else, and far in between. They all walk down to the same synagogue when they get ready to go on a Saturday morning. Some of them people walk 5 miles almost to get to synagogue because they're in their sections and they're in their pieces. I'm rare to see an Asian shop at any store. It's rare. They eat their food. You rare. I don't know that if I've ever seen an Asian at any restaurant, unless they were with a group of people that were different than them. It's something that you're rare to see. So I think economically we have to just come together and to be more tight knit. If we're teaching anything, that's what we have to begin to teach. Economics and our culture. To me, it's nothing wrong with being in your own culture. There's nothing wrong with that. I think desegregation was probably one of the worst things that could have happened to integrate people who are different because now they have a reason to have a prejudice. I had a situation occur with me at a Publix. The man told me that the lady was using her discretion. I told him, don't you ever. You need to lose that because this discretion creates prejudice. That's what it does because it gives you that moment to use your judgment how you want. And that's what's happening to us. Everyone is using discretion. When the police stops you, it's his discretion that you're suspect. You look suspicious. That's his discretion. Because when he write the report, that's how he's going to write it. Suspicion is nothing more than discretion. So now you got the prejudice that you're bestowing upon me. I'm going to have to be left to assume it's because I'm cultured. Because now I fit into every realm that they taught you before they let you out on the streets. To have you patrol the streets of people that you don't know anything about. because you didn't raise up with us. I got stopped by a police officer in Miami years ago. Told me, say he from Fort Lauderdale. I said, where about? He said, in Cooper City. I said, that ain't Lauderdale. We ain't the same. You grew up in Cooper City, baby. You didn't grow up in Carroll City. You grew up in Cooper City. Do you know what you're saying? He's already told himself because he had a few cultured friends that he was okay to overstand cultured people, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So our goal should be is to create the solution. And the greatest solution that we can create for ourselves is to become economically strong. That's where we're failing. Because the people with the money are the people that's respected, because that's the only thing America understands. We pull our money out of the market, they'll realize it. But we don't do that because we've made ourselves need them instead of us creating something to make them need us. They copy everything you do and then they capitalize on it. Scouts on them. They teaching dance. How the fuck you teach dance? How the fuck you teach dance and most of you don't even have fucking rhythm? How the fuck you teach dance? That doesn't make any sense. But we give it away because to us, we don't really realize how valuable we are. We don't realize it. So we don't capitalize on our strengths. That's the problem. Caucasian people are just being exactly who they are. Police officers are being exactly who they are. We have to fix us. And I think that's a really big thing. And it's been such an amazing, I always enjoy, excuse me, when we get together when I get together with people on these panels, because there's always something that somebody said that made something that we say, whoever it comes from, that makes someone say, wow, I never thought about it that way. And it's really important. It's really important. So I hope this won't be our last panel that we're coming to sit together on. I hope that we could, we're having more of these talks, you and me, and me and other poets, so that we can continue to make that difference and to continue to create the solution and the problem that we have as a culture people. That I think our culture has been suffering for so long. And I think a lot of it is situational, but I think more of it is mindset. I think a lot of us just don't think the way that we don't think with the necessary thoughts that's gonna get us out of the situation. What we're doing is, you said earlier that they pacify us, but that's all we ever asked for. Technically, I want injustice in an unjust situation. That doesn't make sense. So he's gonna pacify you. I saw a video the other day, a fellow, and not to discredit what the police officer's goal was. So, don't take it that way. But the man came to the line where the boy was standing and he hugged, he gave him, five and, folded and hugged him for the moment. That's only for the moment. Because we don't know how he feels when he's behind the scenes. Why aren't our culture cops coming out there to do those things? To be seen more. Why aren't they hiring more of them in our neighborhoods? Because you've already discredited them with your law.
And I think that's what goes back to, again, with the black community, because a lot of times offers get in place because they're appointed by these mayors. And what do black people not like to do every time it comes around? Vote. It is imperative that you vote. Like, you need to, it's people making decisions about you. You're wondering why certain things are not happening and judges are not making certain decisions because you voted those judges in or didn't vote those judges in. Like, the black vote is very important. Like, this is why you have white politicians coming to black churches and telling you about racism instead of going to white churches and talking about racism. It's why you have these politicians wearing kente cloth. The black vote is very, very imperative into molding anything. So I think that's one of the things we need to do, because anybody else, not only we're going to learn those laws, they're going to make sure who's ever carrying out those laws have the same ideology as them. So, and make sure you vote in all elections, especially the ones that are local, because those are going to always directly affect you. And you see this with this pandemic going on, as 45 said, masking things will be left up to states' discretion. And
right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So once again, this has been a great time. I thank you very much,
I
Wednesday,
think
for
you're on
coming.
mute.
Who, me?
Mm-hmm.
You can't hear me?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can't hear you.
Hmm.
I still can't hear you. No noise whatsoever.
What about now?
Nope. Still can't hear you. I saw your
That's really
mute,
funny.
unmute. Still can't hear you.
Well, just in case the viewers can hear me, I'm not sure. Maybe there's a connectivity issue between you and I.
Okay,
Can
you
you
and
read
I.
my lips? You can hear me
Mm-hmm.
now? Okay. So I was saying I wanted to say thank you very much for coming on with us tonight. And
You're welcome. We're just gonna do this lip reading thing.
that once again that we'll meet here in the same place next time. This is Wednesday night Poets Parley, and this is where the two poets would always get together and talk about the issue at hand. So if the people out there can hear me, I want to say thank you for coming on. And
Anytime.
this is your happy bug, and I am your motivational speaking poet. And I'll see you. As a matter of fact, I'll see you next Tuesday for Talk Tuesdays, and we'll see you here again next Wednesday for Wednesday Poets Parlay. So thank you once again for all the viewers. You have a great rest of your wonderful evening, and good night.
Are we waving